This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Hi, and welcome to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. My name is Bill Moore. I'm the founder of the Food Truck Training Group on Facebook, co-owner with my beautiful wife, Melissa, of our own food truck. It's called Food Truck 101, and I'm the executive director of the National Street Food Vendors Association, which is a nonprofit dedicated to education, advocacy, and uplifting all food vendors. Today, we're going to talk about what should you do when you get feedback. First thing is you got to ask for feedback. I strongly recommend, you put a QR code up right beside wherever you have your food picked up and then refer everybody to that QR code. Underneath the QR code, it should say, please leave us a review. So that way people don't think the QR code's taking them off to a menu. When you hand out the food, you want to say, hey, would you please give us a review? It really does help grow our business. Right there's the QR code. Just scan it, leave us a review. We really do appreciate it. And most people will ignore you, but there will be enough that will say, yes, absolutely, I will do that. And they will scan that QR code and leave a review after they eat your food. You need feedback. But what do you do when you get a situation where you're setting up, say, in a brewery? And we had this happen this past weekend. Someone said that they had set up at a brewery. It was a fairly decent day, if I recall right. They were happy. Said they served 100 people. And said that the management or the employees of the brewery said they had 8 complaints. 3 of the complaints were from a family unit, and then the rest of the complaints were from different people, all of which said the same thing. The food was too salty. Then the question on this particular post was, should I ignore it? What should I do? And they gave 2 choices. I don't remember what the 2 choices were, but here's what you don't do. You do not ignore feedback. You don't want to ignore feedback for one reason. Feedback is an opportunity for you to get better. Now, in this situation, the feedback came secondhand, and there may be some reasons to read between the lines on that. So as a brewery, they want to make sure that they're putting somebody out front that's going to keep their clients happy. Otherwise, you as a food truck owner end up chasing away their business. So the brewery does not want that. And I know there's a whole bunch of you out there that say, oh my God, breweries suck. Nobody wants to eat my food. Well, it's probably your food. Because I can tell you there are food truck owners out there that have been asked to leave a brewery because the brewery couldn't handle their overflow. Sorry, we're too busy when you're here. We don't want you to come back anymore. That's the kind of food truck you want to be. One that has such an awesome following that you can only go to the biggest venues for them to be able to handle your following. Most people, when they go to a brewery, expect the brewery to support them. Oh my God, it's so slow. Why are you slow, goofy? Go inside, pass some food out, give some samples. If you're slow, you might want to look internally and see what the problem is. But this particular food truck wasn't slow. They had 100 covers, 100 bits of food that they sent out, and they got feedback. So 92 people were either happy or didn't want to complain. But 8 of them did complain. They complained to that brewery owner. Now the brewery owner has now 8 complaints. That's a lot of complaints. That is a lot of complaints. So you got some issues there. Number one, was the food really too salty? Over time, people that salt their food end up salting it more and more and more. You can see it anytime you watch a cooking show where the chef's going, oh, I love how aggressive they're being with the seasoning. And you got some nut that is literally covering something in salt to the point where it looks like it snowed. That is too much seasoning. Salt is there to enhance the flavor, not dominate the flavor. So if you take a bite into something and it tastes salt first, there's a problem. It should not taste salt first. But over time, your palate gets adjusted to that amount of salt. When someone heavily salts something, they have to continually heavily salt it more and more. Basically, your palate drifts away from what is reasonable to we need this whole bunch more salt. It's like being addicted to something. You need more and more of it. So if you get people, especially different people in a small environment saying, hey, that food was a little bit salty, you got a problem. You can't ignore it. Now, some of the solutions that were given on our Facebook group, some of them were good ideas. Some of them were not good ideas, and some of them were just dumb. So the dumb ones were, you can't please everybody. Well, no, you can't. If 99 people were happy and one complained, you're right. You can't please everybody. That's common. But when you have 8% of your food that's gone out have a complaint about being too salty, you might want to pay attention. You cannot ignore feedback. Because you also remember, in this case, it wasn't firsthand feedback. So the brewery now has 8 reasons not to invite you back, or 8 reasons to tell you no the next time you say, hey, can I come set up? Nope, you're that salty dude. We don't want you. Salt works well on pretzels. It increases the instance of people buying drinks. You don't want to have a whole meal of salt because you end up throwing it away because it just doesn't taste good after a while. So when you get a complaint, especially a consistent complaint, you might want to examine your procedures. One of the other ideas that we're given is, hey, you need to test your food. I agree. If you think that your food is salted properly and has the correct level of seasoning, test it. The problem is you can't test it on your own family because families tend to eat very similar things. Of the 8 people that complained, 3 of them were in the same family. So technically it's really just one complaint because they all obviously are used to light salt. So your family eating your food at home is probably accustomed to heavy salt, and they'll say, no, this is just fine. When I first got married, Melissa's mom very heavily salts things to the point where she even recognizes it sometimes when she overdoes it. I come from a family who mom and dad both couldn't eat a lot of salt. The doctor said, hey, blood pressure problems, cut back on the salt. So they did. Me and my sister grew up not salting anything. I always thought it was weird when I go to somebody's house and there's a salt shaker on the table. It's like, what's that for? My dad used pepper a lot, so I was accustomed to seeing pepper, but I was not accustomed to seeing salt. So families get used to the way the dominant person in the family cooks. And if they want to keep eating, they keep saying, yeah, it's awesome. So they've trained themselves that awesome is whatever level of salt that particular cook uses. So you can't test your food on your family. That's why I say in my books, don't test your food on your family, because they're going to tell you, yeah, it's awesome, because that's what they're accustomed to eating. You need to take it to friends who don't eat your food very frequently. Take it to coworkers who certainly don't eat your food very frequently and get their feedback. When you have an instance where you have multiple complaints like that, you really need to take them serious. It's not a matter of, well, I need to ask for input. You already got the input. The input is, hey, dude, you're salting stuff too much. Let's go figure this out. You absolutely cannot ignore feedback. You can't hide behind, oh, there's one complaint, no big deal. For every one complaint, there's several that didn't complain because either they weren't asked or they just didn't want to speak up because they don't care enough about you anyway. I just don't want to use that truck no more. So when that truck's here at the brewery, I'll go somewhere else. Brewery doesn't want to hear that. So right now the brewery, that particular brewery, has 8 people that are saying, yeah, we ain't coming back when that food truck's here. And for everyone that spoke up and said, hey, it's stuff's too salty, there's several that didn't bother. They just won't come back. So when you get feedback, especially a lot of feedback saying the same thing, you might want to check it out. It is definitely not going to be beneficial to your future to ignore it. People tend to ask questions on Facebook groups to get support because they really don't want to do anything. I got 8 complaints. I really just don't want to handle it. I know. I'll ask some random people that don't know me at all. So they'll justify that, yeah, just ignore it. Because there was a whole bunch of people that said you can't please everybody. As if that's the way to grow a business. If you've ever worked in a restaurant, you most likely have seen a roach at some point. Roaches live outdoors. They come inside every single day. Especially if you live in an area that has lots of trees, lots of grass. So you're going to see roaches from time to time. Having a pest control system is why we have to pay for one, and have it on our HACCP plan. Helps control them. It doesn't eliminate them. It's not pest elimination. It is pest control. But if you don't have pest control in place and you see one, there's many, many more that have sense enough not to be seen by humans so they don't get stomped on, or they're already in the woodwork and in the walls and behind stuff and underneath stuff. So when you see one that was brave enough to run out, you stomp on him. Same with a complaint. You had someone that just doesn't care, I'm going to complain, and they say it. There's a whole bunch of people that didn't. Now, if you ignore that one cockroach, I ain't going to stomp him. It's just one. He'll be gone soon anyway. He's got a whole bunch of family There's a whole bunch of other cockroaches. You just don't see them. You haven't heard those complaints. Don't care. So you will eventually have yourself overran with cockroaches. You ignore complaints, you will eventually be overrun with complaints, and then eventually you'll be out of business. Pay attention to feedback. Don't look for support to ignore it. Get out there and handle it. Figure out what happened. Feedback's a good thing, even negative feedback, because it gives you a chance to grow. But ignoring it will be just like those cockroaches. You'll eventually be overran and out of business. Thank you so much for listening to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing. And if you love what we do, show some support. There's a link in the description to make that happen. Until next time, you guys have a profitable week.